happens.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Right. Welcome, everybody, to the Two Swigs and a Sig episode on the What podcast. It's not quite two swigs and a Sig. It's just two swigs this time because unfortunately Cobra can't be here because he's off doing something, probably enjoying himself somewhere. But yeah, just me and Camel like the old days, the old whiskey and rum days, mate.
Happy to be here, mate. Nice to have a catch up with you. And yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, we've just had a humdinger of 50-minute conversation offline. And we forgot to really get going, didn't we? But it was really
Yeah,
interesting.
but
Really,
it's okay.
really.
We'll never run out of things to talk about.
Absolutely, dude. Absolutely. Right, mate, before we kick off, I did do a little asking people, do they want us to, or and do they want to ask any questions? And we did have two people ask some questions. So, and they're for you. I knew they wouldn't be for me somehow. So I'm just going to read them out so we can go through it, just so I can keep to my word and ask you.
Yep.
The first one is from Cosmo Crane. Oh, sorry, mate. I've been really rude there. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm good, bro. I'm good.
Yeah,
You have
sorry,
already
mate.
asked me, just not on camera.
But
Not
not
on.
on camera. Yeah, I know. But it's like a little bit sort of, oh my God, it's a little bit informal.
Nah, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah, you know I'm okay. So yeah,
That's cool.
good.
That's
Thank you.
cool.
How are you, mate?
Yeah, absolutely great. Always love these conversations. I absolutely love it. The channel's doing really great. Thank you very much for being a part of it.
Good.
Really,
I love
really
it.
good. Right. The first question was from Cosmo Kramer, 8119. Thank you very much for putting this. And he put, morning, great podcast. Thank you. And really enjoying them. Brilliant. I get a lot of those, which is fantastic. What's Camel's line in the sand with BTC price? And at what point should we be nervous? And he's put, keep it up. Thank you.
My line in the sand would be. Oh, can I pull up a chart really quickly?
Of course you can.
I don't know if I know it off. Maybe I should know it off the top of my head. I'll say this: it's not as black and white as that because it depends on how we get there. That's the key. So, if for example we were to wick all the way down in a single day to I don't know arbitrary number $30,000, right? If we were to do that all the way down, and then within 2, 3, 4 sessions later we're back above 45K, then that is a completely different setup to if we slowly but surely walk our way down to 40, 44, or even 35K. So it is setup dependent. At the moment, I would say bull market invalidation, meaning we are 100% going into a bear market, sits at around 36K. For me, if we dropped below 44K, I would be thinking I've got to sell at least a good chunk of my spot Bitcoin and wait
Yeah.
for momentum to return. And I'm looking at the chart now. Anything below 50K is probably me starting to lighten up.
Yeah.
I really don't see, but again, it's setup dependent because how do we get to 50K is the question. If we slowly walk down over a period of multiple weeks now, and then we start to close below 50K, that's a really bad sign. But
Yeah.
if we were to puke below 50K, we could go all the way down to 40, even 35, and then recover in a few days' time, back above 50 again. Suddenly, we've got a completely different setup. Suddenly,
Yeah.
that speaks to a big liquidation cascade, a big panic sell off event, just like we saw in the C19 era, where we were trading around the $8,000, $9,000 level. And then in about 3 or 4 days, we went from 9K down to 3K. But the setup was not necessarily bearish because within just a matter of days, we were back above 5.5K. And within a couple of weeks, we were back above 7 or 8K. So
Hmm.
it's how we get there that's important rather than a line in the sand number. It's also worth noting that you have to factor in capital gains tax. So
Yeah.
I'm a higher rate taxpayer, which means I have to pay double the amount of capital gains tax normal people. Well, I said normal people. That sounded really bad, didn't it? Your average person would have to pay, or a standard rate taxpayer would have to pay. And so if I was to sell all my spot Bitcoin here or somewhere in this neighborhood, then I need it to fall at least 20% further just to be able to break even on the capital gains tax I've got to pay, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, like I said before, it really depends on the path that we take to get there. If it's a quick puke below and a recovery, then we can handle that. And if it's a slow, steady walk down, then of course that's a completely different thing. But anything above 44K, and I don't think we need to worry at all.
Yeah.
Below 44K, and I think we really are in the danger zone.
Bless you.
Thanks.
You're very welcome. Excellent. Thank you very much for that. And the other comment was from, it's really interesting, Luke. So Luke, who I think asked you about or put you on to oh, the last video you did the other day. Oh, from Thursday.
Whiskey Wednesday. Oh,
Yeah.
the fourth turning.
Yes, Luke, that Luke. He
By
said
the
the
way, I love that guy. That guy is so based. I have huge respect for Luke. So shout out Luke if you're listening.
Yeah, definitely. And that's really just from what we was talking about off air. It's so fascinating. These sort of people beginning to become into this group of discussion.
Yeah.
Very like-minded. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Yeah, Luke, got a lot of time for Luke. Well, I've got a lot of time for a lot of people. It's really cool. Absolutely really cool. Anyway, Luke says, hello, CPM, mate. Hi, dude. A question for Camel. Boo. Why don't I get any questions? I must be really boring. Question for Camel regarding assets, especially gold and the reset coming up. When do you think the best time to cash in on profits made on gold will be? During the reset and while things are still a lot more turbulent, or on the back end of the reset and when things are starting to calm down?
My
Also, hang on,
sorry, go on.
I'll split it up for you in a minute. Also, what sort of opportunities do you see for people that own hard assets such as precious metals in the coming years ahead? And he says, cheers, CPM, mate. Hope you're doing well today, bud. Watch how you go, which is a really nice thing to say. So, do you want me to read that first bit again for you?
Yeah, is that all right?
Yeah, of course, no problem at all. So, regarding assets, especially gold and the reset coming up, when do you think the best time to cash in on profits made on gold will be? During the reset, and while things are still a lot more turbulent, or on the back end of the reset when things are starting to calm down?
For me personally,
Mhm.
I think I think the best way to play this gold bull market is to understand that gold undergoes 8 year cycles and we're only about a year and a half into the current cycle. So for me, that puts us in a roaring bull market for gold for at least another 5.5, 6 years, something like that. And
Mhm.
then we can expect to see the first true pullback. And arguably, we could see another 8 year bull cycle thereafter. Um, for me personally, I'm kind of in this camp of people that thinks we're going to see a huge rally for gold. And I think we're probably going to see five-figure gold ounces by the end of the decade, somewhere in the 10 to 15K an ounce region. And I know a lot of people think, well, that's impossible, and that's fine. That's to be determined. But I think the real play or the real thing to be shooting for here for the long-term gold and silver holders is that once we get towards the end of the decade, they're potentially going to use gold to fix the debt issue. So this will look something akin to the central banks buying a huge chunk of gold, them saying, well, we've got loads of debt and a bunch of gold. How do we fix this problem? Well, the way they fix the problem is they reprice the gold significantly higher. And if you back it 1 to 1 with the current M2 supply, then we get a $40,000 ounce, which I know sounds unbelievably insane. But if we were to see something like that, where they reprice the gold massively higher, lock the zeros off the massively inflated currency, and then start the whole new system, perhaps it's a CBDC system, perhaps it's a digital system, whatever it is. But whatever the new system is, will probably have gold as a backing, as a component. And for me, it's getting through that is the ultimate goal. So for my long-term holding, I'm thinking we'll get all the way out into 2030, 2032, and hopefully we've got at least 10 to 15K. And I think those targets will probably be conservative. And then if we do see this repricing, if we do see this reset, I would imagine those targets do prove to be significantly conservative. But for me, it's the back end of that decade that I'm looking to think about taking some profit. So for now, I think it's just we're in a bull market. It's going to keep going up. Dips are for buying, and yeah, five-figure gold is the target for me at least.
Okay. And it also puts on that also, what sort of opportunities do you see for people that own hard assets, such as precious metals, in the coming years ahead?
I think the people that hold the hard assets are going to be the ones that do the best. Because number one, if you particularly for things like cold stored Bitcoin for physical gold, physical silver, they carry no counterparty risk. So it's one thing having exposure to these metals via ETFs or derivatives, but if we get to a point where things really hit the fan, and we don't know that they will hit the fan to that degree, but if they do in the worst case scenario, then those paper holders might not get paid out.
Yeah.
But if you hold the hard assets with no counterparty risk, it's the physical gold, the physical Bitcoin. If you hold that stuff in your hand, then assuming the worst happens and the paper system collapses, you're not going to be subject to being robbed because you've got it in your hand, right?
Yeah.
So I think the opportunity is there. I think we are not too far away from the next round of printing. And based on historical data, every time they print more and more and more. So I think it's reasonable to expect 10 or even 20 trillion of QE at the next round. I do think that's probably not coming for another 12 to 18 months at least, but at some point it will be coming. And again, this is this speaks to you wanting to have these hard assets with no counterparty risk.
Mm.
And holding stocks might be one thing, but again, you are extending counterparty risk by holding stocks in some kind of brokerage account that could conceivably just say they're not going to pay you out or whatever. If you look in the small print, if there's each one of these ETFs, no matter what it's for, has something called a KIDS document, a key investor information document. And if you go through there, in every single one of them, it says somewhere in there that you accept full liability, which means if they can't pay you for whatever reason, if they go broke, then you bear the risk, right? So
Yeah.
a lot of people maybe don't know
Mm.
this, but if you hold paper gold or paper ETF in any form, then you have already accepted that if the worst should happen, you're not getting paid out. So I think, therefore, holding the physical assets is the best way to go about it. And the opportunity is there for those people that hold the hard assets because, like I said, they are reasonably going to print at least 10, if not 20 trillion in the next round. Like I said before, that probably isn't coming for 12 to 18 months at least, but it is coming at some point. And when it does, the only way to preserve your purchasing power is going to be in those hard assets.
Mm. I'm just wondering what he means by his question there.
What's
He
that?
says also, what sort of opportunities do you see for people that own hard assets? So is he saying, or is he asking, hypothetically, if you're owning hard assets, they're doing well in the coming years, will there be any opportunities that will be of favor for those people that actually own those hard assets?
Well, the opportunity will be that you can preserve your purchasing power
Yeah,
and your wealth in a world where most people are unable to do so. Right. I
yeah,
mean, if we just look back to the prior 4 years, we saw what was it, like 6 trillion in QE, and
yeah,
that led to all that inflation that we saw, all of the C19 era stuff. Most people did not do well out of that unless they held the hard assets. The last cycle or the last QE bomb that we saw over the last few years, if you held tech stocks or something akin to the S&P index, then you probably did quite well at preserving your purchasing power. But the reality is the next time around is going to be a lot worse. The next time around, most people that don't hold any assets at all are not going to be able to survive it. At least, I mean, you got to think every time they inflate or debase the currency, it's an exponential and compound growth, right? So we've already debased it in the last 4 years. And now if we print another 10 or 20 trillion, that's going to be inflation added to the prior inflation. So
yeah,
even though we use the CPI metric, which comes down over time, and we say, well, CPI is now approaching 2%, that is 2% relative to a year ago where it was 20%, right?
yeah,
It doesn't mean that suddenly your loaf of bread is going to come down in value. It's just the rate of inflation has slowed relative to where it was a year ago when it was 20%.
sure.
So it's still going up in terms of it takes more fiat to buy you a loaf of bread. It's just the rate at which it goes up is slowing down. But by the time we get to this next round of printing, and like I said, we're looking at 10 or 20 trillion, then
Yeah,
suddenly we're going to see these double digit inflation numbers return and we're going to be adding 20, 30, 40% per year onto our loaves of bread. And again, if you don't hold a hard asset with no counterparty risk, then you're going to be all out of opportunity to preserve your purchasing power.
Yeah, it's probably the best thing to take from that is to hold on to the physical asset to protect your wealth as such.
Yeah, it's a store of value, right? That's what
Yeah,
it is. You're storing
yeah,
the value and you protect yourself from the inevitable fiat debasement that is due to come over the next few years.
cool. That's the question sorted.
Happy days.
Open mic, mate. Where do you want to go?
Open
What
mic.
do you want to talk about? What
I
do you want to talk about?
don't know. What do you want to talk about?
Oh, well, probably the stuff I can't talk about, really.
Well, you can try. It'll make for some interesting
No, no,
conversation.
won't. No, 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 definitely not. Um, let's should we talk a little bit more about Bitcoin?
Yeah, if you want to.
Yeah. Okay, with everything that's going on,
Yep.
with all the ups and downs, since the ETFs have come along, since institutions seem to have got involved, since we get tons, well, I believe in all the time I've been tracking or involved around the Bitcoin space, there's more talk about Bitcoin now than there's ever been. Would you agree? Whether it's positive or negative
Um,
or not, I don't know. I'm only going from my experience.
no, do you know what? I think it's 2021.
Okay,
I think that 2021 peak had more.
okay.
Yeah, in my
So
experience.
so that'd be really cool because you can answer this then,
Yeah.
because I can't compare it. Um, what have you noticed any difference between what was going on and being said there to what the sentiment is now, or is it the same? Is it more? Is it less? Is it more positive? Is it more negative?
It seems to me that there's less attention on it this time around.
Okay.
In 2021, when we made that first peak of around 65K, we had Elon Musk going on Saturday Night Live talking about Bitcoin. Um, there was a whole heap of celebrities endorsing it. I had friends and family that have never invested in any asset ever before messaging me nearly every day, asking me how they get into Bitcoin and whether now is a good time to buy. And then when I contrast that to today, I see very little mainstream coverage. I haven't had a single text from a friend or family member asking about it. I don't really see a whole heap of celebrities endorsing it. Back in 2021, there was the whole NFT craze where every man and his dog, well, every celebrity and his dog was launching NFTs and all of these kind of sort of scammy altcoins that were associated with, I think Snoop Dogg was launching a range of something and Trump this time around has been talking again about crypto, which is maybe starting to lean us more towards a hype building. But it seems to me that this time around is a lot more quiet than 2021 was.
And is that based on the mainstream media side?
Well, I'm not entirely sure. My best guess for this has been that last time around, we were coming off the back of lockdown. A lot of people were changing careers. A lot of people were locked down in their house and didn't have much to do. A lot of people hadn't suffered the huge rounds of inflation yet. A lot of people were given stimulus checks and all types of government benefits and handouts. And this time around, it seems like we're in a completely different situation. This time around, it seems like no one's been given any handouts. There's no stimulus checks. We are not locked down. We have suffered massive inflation. If you look at consumer credit card debt, that's at all-time highs. Personal savings has dropped below the pre-pandemic levels, and most people seem to be of the opinion that crypto is kind of a scam. Maybe they bought the top in 2021 and it went down and they sold, and now they don't really care, right? That seems to be my perspective on it. And like I said, we haven't got the situation where everyone's locked down, everyone's bored, everyone's thinking maybe I should be a crypto trader. Um, there's, like I said, no more stimulus checks. I haven't seen Elon Musk go back on Saturday Night Live and talk about adding Bitcoin to Tesla's balance sheet. And maybe that stuff is to come later in the cycle. Maybe the mania will build again. But it just seems this time around is a lot more quiet than 2021.
It's a strange one, isn't it? Because like for me, listening to that, you go back to the 2021 all-time high. Was it 2021 all-time high?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. If there was a lot of hype, was the hype? the build up to that, or did the hype really kick in at the top? Because we've had an all time high, higher than that all time high this cycle already.
Yep.
But the from what you're saying, it's not the same. And I'm just trying to work out, well, what's different? Why could it be different? Is there something more orchestrated here to keep it under the? I don't know. I'm trying to go to poke a few little holes here
Yeah,
to make it interesting.
I don't really know exactly.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it?
It just seems this time around people don't really care. And
Mm,
initially I interpreted that as very bullish because the longer it's under the radar
yeah,
and the more the price can continue to build and go higher,
yeah,
then the less sort of speculative bubble that we see and the more organic price appreciation we are experiencing. So I
yeah,
kind of like the fact that it's not gotten the attention that it did before. Whenever you get loads of attention like that, and like I say, Elon Musk going on Saturday Night Live to promote Bitcoin or talk about adding it to Tesla's balance sheet, that's always kind of a big warning sign, you know? It's always
yeah,
kind of like, oh man, it's gotten to this stage.
yeah,
But this time around, people have been really cynical. They didn't really think we could reach an all-time high before the halving, and they've only just gotten in as of late. They've only just been forced into the market, and now the market's pulled back another 20, 25%, and they've all gotten wrecked and they're all really upset about it. And to me, that's good. That's good. It speaks to us being able to continue to climb higher. And we will get to a FOMO stage, I think, at some point in the not too distant future. And I'm sure we will see the equivalent of Elon Musk going on Saturday Night Live again in the not too distant future. Patterns tend to repeat. We tend to see that same kind of FOMO driven euphoria kick in at the tops. But for now, I think it's a positive sign because, like I say, we made an all time high before the halving. We've had a little shakeout, and I think now we're ready for the next leg.
yeah,
And again, there's still very minimal attention. I haven't had any friends and family reaching out to me. I haven't had, as far as I'm aware, in my comment section, people aren't really they agree with that. They aren't getting bombarded by their family and friends or their Uber driver to go and buy Bitcoin. And I think the longer we keep it under wraps, then the higher we can go before we get to that sort of FOMO driven frenzy at the top.
sure.
So it's interesting. But I
It
think
is.
also the story for a lot of people in crypto is they kind of heard about it a while ago and they didn't really care. And then maybe they bought the top in around 2021 or whenever. And then they probably lost some money. And like I say, back then as well, they were locked down and they had some extra money to play with. They hadn't been wrecked by inflation. But this time around, they don't really care. I think this time around, your average person that's not in this space is kind of looking at their attention is in other places, right? They've got to try to figure out how they can earn enough money to continue to service their mortgage at the higher interest rate and put meat on the table for their family, all of that kind of stuff. And we're not really in the same situation anymore where people have got excess capital and they're looking to speculate in the crypto market. So I think it's completely different to how it has been. But again, I don't necessarily think that's a bad sign. I think the longer we keep it under wraps, then the higher we could potentially go.
Yeah. And do you think that could be slightly orchestrated as well?
Um, I
Sorry.
don't think so, to be honest. I see a lot
Okay.
of people speculating that maybe BlackRock is behind this and they're not going to let it pump and X, Y, and Z, but I don't really feel like that's the case. I think we pumped so hard and so fast that now we've had to spend some time consolidating that move. And even though it feels like the end of the world, particularly if you're in altcoins, Bitcoin is only down 25% from its prior all-time high.
Yeah.
And that sounds like a lot, but for Bitcoin, it really isn't. I mean, in the 2017 bull run, it had multiple dips of 30 to 40%.
Yeah.
So I don't really think there's any, what's the word? Uh, Foul play going on at the moment. I really don't think that's the case. I think it's just that we doubled in a matter of a couple of weeks from 30K to 75K. And now we're digesting that move. And the fact that we're only down 20, 25% to me is more bullish than bearish, even though the sentiment out there is very bearish. And a lot of people are trying to call tops here and say that we're about to enter a bear market. And of course, they could be right. But to me, when you double that quickly and then you consolidate in a tight range of 20, 25%, that sets us up for another leg higher. So, and I also like the fact that that setup is occurring with maximum bearish sentiment, with a lot of people doubting it, with a lot of people calling tops. And that is what we call the wall of worry, which markets love to climb.
Yeah. It always fascinates me. You know what my mind's like.
Yeah.
it fascinates me because there's a common denominator between the two. Correct me if I'm wrong, because what do I know really? But if you compare the last bull market to this one, did what was the last one actually was institutional buying or interest in accumulating Bitcoin a part of that, or is it purely this bull run really that they're really sort of getting their heads into it now?
I mean, my personal opinion on this is
Yeah.
they have been here since
Yes.
2015.
Yeah.
And I think back in 2014, 2015, it was probably a handful of institutional traders that were unofficially pushing the market.
Yeah.
That's my expectation that say you worked for a hedge fund with me and we clocked this asset called Bitcoin and we were like, well, we could probably make a bunch of money with this thing.
Yeah.
That's kind of been my expectation that they a handful of these institutional traders have been using Bitcoin to pump their own bags as a side project.
Yeah.
By the time we got to 2017 and then had that bear market, I think then we started to see probably the institutions come in, although not officially. But I would
Yeah.
imagine that's where the institutions came in and started to figure out ways to get hold of some supply. Officially, they came in right around the top of the 2021 bull market. And I would imagine BlackRock had been buying the whole way down and all the way through the bear market before their ETFs obviously got approved halfway through this current bull cycle. So officially, BlackRock didn't enter the market until sort of late 2021, right? But I would imagine that they probably had they probably had some institutional traders playing with this thing all the way back to 20, even as early as 2012, 2013 wouldn't surprise me at all, to be honest. CPM?
Sorry. I
You
haven't,
dead?
yeah, sorry, mate. I didn't realize. It's because I was puffing on my vape.
On your vape. Oh,
and,
okay.
and I'm right next to the flipping mic, and it probably sounds like I'm a train. Sorry, dude. Um, I often wonder, we've spoke about it before as well offline. Now, if possibly that the I mean, we're talking about money that I can't comprehend sometimes when you're talking about trillions. It's just so difficult to get your head around, but it
Yeah.
exists. It exists. We've got to accept it exists because it exists. If you're sort of really now, they've played their cards. Obviously, well, we're going to talk about BlackRock because they're the biggest guys out there, aren't they? They've played their
Yeah.
cards. They've got the ETF. It's now out there. Um, so I would imagine they've got some sort of interest in Bitcoin, because otherwise they wouldn't probably do it and put it out there, officially. So I don't know what their long term gain is, but if we sort of play with the idea, if possibly that their game along with the other big boys is to sort of try to accumulate, and we've mentioned this before, sort of 30% of the Bitcoin supply, then they've got to be clever the way they do that without letting all us lot get involved too much. So that's where I think, and I had this little thought, I think this morning, whilst I was listening to a podcast, funny enough, and it just dawned on me when we see the prices of what's been going on since the ETFs have been happening, it's almost like what I would call an institutionalized DCA system, if that makes sense. It's almost like the the we'll get the price up, get some interest in there, and then we'll somehow. I mean, they seem to dip it, or whoever's doing it, selling it off, is dipping it really quickly for then big buyers because they seem to whip it up again from those low prices. It seems to recover pretty quickly. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It
Yeah, so I looked at it and I thought, is this a way that the big boys can DCA at a different level to what I would call DCA? So they can get all their bags, start bagging up, possibly out of reach because it's still like $40,000, $50,000 for most people is a lot of money. But for them, when you're dealing with big amounts of money, maybe it's not. I don't know. It's just a hypothetical thought that comes to my
No,
mind
you're
this
right.
morning.
You're right because Bitcoin has a very limited supply, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So 21 million total. Then you remove a million for Satoshi, about 3 million that are lost forever.
yeah,
And of what is left, around 70% is not movable, right? 70% is held by people that put it in cold storage and hold it for the long term.
yeah,
So you're left with a few million coins at the most. And we're
yeah,
also at a stage now where the mined supply
yeah,
from the miners is immediately sold OTC to places like BlackRock and other institutions. So even the new block reward supply is not really coming onto the market.
yeah,
So what we've got is a very, very small amount of Bitcoin and an increasing number of large players with very deep pockets coming into the space.
yeah,
And they can't just show up and hit market buy for these larger orders, right? They have to have a certain level of price manipulation. I use that term very loosely, but they do have to be able to trap a bunch of people into selling their Bitcoin in order to generate the liquidity to let these bigger players in.
yeah,
And I mean, I think we've been seeing that lately. We've seen Germany offloading a bunch of Bitcoin and they print it
yeah,
in the news and say, oh, Germany's flooding the Bitcoin price,
yeah,
Germany's dumping the Bitcoin and Bitcoin's going to 30K. But it will most probably come out in the not too distant future that they really were just dumping that Bitcoin so that, I don't know, Michael Dell
yeah,
from Dell can announce a $1 billion Bitcoin buy
yeah,
and add that Bitcoin to the corporate treasury, just like Michael Saylor does with MicroStrategy.
yeah,
So yeah, it's a bit of a different market because it's still such a nascent asset, even though it's 15 years old. It's still such a nascent asset that
mm,
we're only rocking with about 1.2 trillion market cap at the moment, something like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
And that sounds like a lot, and it's certainly a big achievement for Bitcoin. But at the same time, it doesn't have the liquidity because, like I said, most of these coins are long term held. Many of them have been lost forever. We've only got a small amount of actual free float to deal with. And so if someone comes along and says, I want to buy hundreds of millions or billions of Bitcoin, then we have to sort of shake the price around to force people to sell to free up some supply
yeah,
so that we can fill these bigger orders.
yeah,
So so yeah, until the market cap reaches 10 trillion, which is, 10 times higher than we are today, we're going to continue to see these kind of games be played to let the big boys in because there's just no other way. There's no other way. If they come in and say, well, I want to buy $1 billion worth of Bitcoin, going to smash buy now at market. Well, the spread they're going to pay is huge. They're going to, by the time they filled a quarter of their order, they're going to pump the price 15, 20%, right? And
yeah,
that's not how they do it. They don't want to do that. Instead,
no,
they'd rather have a bot that executes, a bunch of microtransactions.
yeah,
And I mean, Sailor uses a TWAP bot
yeah,
and it goes undetected. But
yeah,
again, the only way you get those orders filled is you have to kind of create some panic and some fear, and you have to
yeah,
run the headlines in the news, and you have to get the people that haven't done their research to panic sell their Bitcoin.
yeah,
Because without your panic sold Bitcoin, these bigger boys can't get in.
yeah. It's the perfect game play, isn't it?
Yeah. And slowly but surely, you'll probably just continue to see this where
Yeah,
retail is shaken out
yeah.
and the bigger boys keep stepping in and hoovering up the supply. And once they've got it, they're probably not going to let it go.
So
They
not
don't need the liquidity, right? They're not like a normal
exactly.
retail trader that's trying
Yeah,
to say, well, I'll put 20K in. If it can go to 100K, then I'll exit it all and I'll
yeah,
pay off my mortgage, right?
yeah.
That's not how they think. They don't
No,
need the money. They don't need the liquidity. What they want is to hold as
the
much
asset.
Bitcoin as they can for the long term because
Yeah,
they know that more printing is coming, more debasement is coming. And
yeah,
over the long term, they are going to be sat on, orders of magnitude more
yeah,
by just holding it. But again, the only way they get hold of that supply is to kind of shake out the people that need the money, so to speak.
yeah. And understanding that logic, and you can, and for me, being a complete pleb at all this, but I'm sort of halfway through my apprenticeship still. But by doing your research and trying to fathom out with a bit of time and a bit of energy, whenever you can, to I don't know, I just put data down. I have it. I'm one of these people that like all those figures in front of me on a screen, so I can then try and associate a pattern, and then I associate the pattern with what's going on with a chart, and I associate that with what's going on, what I'm hearing out there, and looking at different bits of clips and information, and try to build that picture. And then all of a sudden, you see, ah, that sort of makes sense. I kind of like that. That gives me a lot of confidence to know that what I'm doing is not to panic. and that re-emphasizes that belief in what you believe in the asset, and possibly what people far uh, greater heads and minds probably seeing it too. And if it's good enough for them, and if that's what they're doing, then it's got to be okay for me. If that does that make sense? And that gives me confidence when you get all this volatility.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately they're going to continue to try to grab as much of the supply as they can
Mm.
because, as I said earlier, they're going to print more money, right?
Yeah.
And Bitcoin responds the best out of all asset classes of all time. It responds the best to freshly printed money.
Yeah.
So if you want to protect and preserve and even increase your purchasing power, then Bitcoin is the only tool to do that. So
Yeah.
it makes perfect sense that the way they capture it is to try to grab hold of as much of the supply as they can, hang on to it for the long term. Like I said earlier, they've got the advantage of not needing the money.
Yeah.
You know, they're not trying to pay their mortgage off. They're trying to just grab hold of a bunch of Bitcoin so that they can hold it until the end of the decade. And yeah, I mean, there's an opportunity there for some people. Some people will be able to grab hold of as much Bitcoin as they can and keep DCA and hold it and play the same game they're playing. But for many people, they're going to get shaken out because
Yeah.
their focus isn't on accumulating as much Bitcoin as possible. Their focus is on paying their mortgage off,
Yeah.
or turning 20K into 40K and
Yeah.
then using that money to buy a new Mercedes or whatever. And to each their own as well. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily wrong. If you want to
Mm.
pay your mortgage off, that doesn't mean that doesn't mean you're wrong for wanting no
Absolutely.
debt and to own your property. Right? There's nothing wrong with
Yeah.
that at all. It's just
Yeah.
a different game, and everyone plays their own game, right? Everyone has their own goals, everyone has their own tasks, and BlackRock's just so happens to be, in my opinion, grab 30% of the supply and then moon this thing to multiple millions of dollars a coin. And if you're not playing the BlackRock game, that doesn't make you wrong. It doesn't
No.
make you a loser or anything like
No.
that. It just simply means that you're not BlackRock, right? And there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. If you
Yeah.
want to pay your mortgage off, pay your mortgage off.
Yeah.
Um, but if you wanted to emulate BlackRock, then buying as much Bitcoin as possible and holding it till the end of the decade might be the strategy.
Yeah.
But
And
again, not everyone has the facility, right? Not everyone has the luxury of being able to say, well, I'll just keep DCA in every month and I don't care. I don't care what the price does. Wake me up at 10 million a coin. And
yeah.
of course, it might not ever make it there as well. That's another possibility, right?
Yeah.
It might actually, it might actually break. Someone might hack it. It might fail. We
Yeah.
might have what do you call it, a cyber attack or a blackout that it proves unable to recover from.
Yeah.
So we don't know. There's always risk, and
Of
we have to
course.
kind of do what we can to manage that risk and make our own allocations with money we're okay with risking, and the rest is up to God, right? The rest is up to fate.
Well, it is, yeah, definitely. It's the only reason why I sort of just said that was just if to just to ask people to ask themselves those questions of what truly they are thinking they are trying to get out of a possible investment into Bitcoin, and to look at the risk and look at if I just want to put some money into it, is it worth it? Is it not? And look at it more logically, and then make your risk assessment from there. Really, to be
It's an
honest.
excellent point because if you don't know what your goal is,
Yeah,
then you're kind of just walking blindly into a cave,
yeah,
right? And like I said earlier, everyone's got different goals, but
yeah,
you should have a well-defined goal because otherwise you don't know where you're aiming.
yeah,
So if your goal is, oh, I owe 70,000 on my mortgage,
yeah,
I would like to try to use this money to pay off my mortgage and be debt free and own my property. If
yeah.
that's your goal, then define that goal now.
Yeah,
And then when you make X amount of money, you can pay your mortgage off. And then
exactly.
you can pat yourself on the back and say, I used Bitcoin as a tool to make sure that I didn't have any debt.
Yep,
And that's fine.
yep,
And if your goal is, well, I just want to accumulate as much Bitcoin as possible because I believe in Bitcoin for the long term. And I think one day it's going to be 10 million a coin.
yep,
Then at least you know your goal, right? And as long as every month you add a bit more to your Bitcoin stack, then you can pat yourself on the back and say, well, I stuck with my goal. I had a goal and I continue to move in the direction of achieving that goal. And there's obviously a million other outcomes here,
of
right? Some
course.
people want to trade altcoins to try to get more Bitcoin. Some people
Yeah,
don't care at all. They just want a quick buck or whatever.
yeah,
But I do think it's important to have a goal, figure out
100%.
whatever you want to achieve with Bitcoin, and then use Bitcoin as a tool to achieve whatever it
Mm.
is you want to achieve, right? So
Yeah,
a very good point because we should all have a goal well defined and then move towards that goal. Because if you don't know that, then you are, like I said, you're just kind of blindly walking into the dark,
Yeah,
feeling around, hoping that maybe something sticks. And that's probably not the best strategy to have.
yeah. One of the things that this is personal opinion, one of the things I've personally grown with that experience is that my goals become bigger than just the asset all of a sudden in my life, because now I'm looking at what I really want to achieve. And now, because I've done that homework into, it was initially Bitcoin, that then expanded my knowledge to look at, okay, is there anything else out there that will help me look at achieving that goal as well, asset based? And then from there, I managed to, I think, and it's a continual process to find and educate other things that now start to build a portfolio with the same goal in mind, but all working with each other to achieve that goal. So Bitcoin has done a lot for me personally in an educational route because it's led me to other things to one, understand what my goal is in life and why I'm doing it. And two, is there anything else that I can use and diversify to help me get to that goal? By eliminating risk and broadening my percentage of being able to achieve it.
Yeah, I completely understand. And you saying that reminded me of that. There's quite a few people in my comment section that they say things to me like they don't really care about the price of Bitcoin. They don't care about Bitcoin, period.
Yeah,
Right. But they are older people that have spotted an opportunity
yeah,
and they're already doing well in life, right? They
yeah,
already own a house, they've already kind of retired, or they're
yeah,
getting towards retirement, they've already had successful careers. Essentially, they don't need any money, right? They're doing
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
And I notice this a lot, and it comes up in the comment section a lot where people say to me, I'm just DCAing Bitcoin, cold storing it, and I'm going to leave it to my grandchildren.
yeah,
And I think that's absolutely fantastic.
yeah,
I think that's absolutely brilliant that they've kind of spotted this opportunity and they realize that they've got some money that's disposable that they can put into Bitcoin. And if it
yeah,
works, it works. And if it doesn't, it doesn't.
yeah,
And, potentially speaking, if you DCA into Bitcoin and leave it for long enough until your grandchildren turn 18, who knows what the value could be, right?
exactly.
So yeah, I mean, there's Bitcoin is many things to many people.
Yeah, it really is, and it's yeah, it's more than just price to me personally. I know a lot of people in different situations will look at it very differently at certain aspects and times of their lives. But it is all these assets are sometimes, if we can get over looking at it by just looking at Bitcoin, gold, silver, whatever, share stocks as a value in a horrible fiat currency, if we can get over that, then all of a sudden, I personally believe, and it's definitely helped me, um, I'm starting to realize that certain goals that I'm starting to put together, I've got a lot of confidence in because I'm not denominating myself around a price, if that makes sense. It
Yeah.
helps, but it's not the be all and end all.
No, one Bitcoin is one Bitcoin, right? It
It
doesn't matter what
is,
the
yeah,
dollar, it doesn't matter what the dollar value is.
yeah,
What matters is how many Bitcoin have you got?
yeah. An ounce of gold is an ounce of gold, an ounce of silver is an ounce of
Exactly.
silver.
Exactly.
20 shares
And
is 20 shares.
yeah, and it's funny because earlier on I was talking about five-figure gold, right? 10 to 15K gold ounces. But
Yeah,
the reality is, if we get there, and I'm pretty sure we will,
yeah.
we're not talking about necessarily the same 10 or 15K that we are today. We could potentially see significant debasement and for all we know, it costs 15K to buy an ounce of gold, but 15K in the future will be the equivalent to 2 or 3K now, right? So in other words, gold may not even outpace inflation. I don't think that's the case personally. I think gold is going to do very, very well. But if we do see these huge amounts of QE and printing that I expect us to see, then again, 10, 15K in today's money is not going to be the same post print in 20 trillion, right?
Mm,
Just how 10 or 15K today is completely different to 10 or 15K back in 2017, 2018, before that whole C19 printing underwent.
exactly.
So so yeah, it's a wild time to be alive.
It's an amazing time. It's definitely a difficult time. It's an exciting time. And I know lots of people probably watching this, watching your channel, have all got their own personal things going on in their lives. But sometimes I really think, especially with Bitcoin, it's if you could just get over the crazy egotistical thing that most people attach to Bitcoin, which is always price. The amount of channels that I watch, and the first thing they say, "Oh, the Bitcoin price." It's almost the first sentence they say, and I think,
Yeah.
"Oh shit! For God's sake, mate, it's more than just price."
Mm.
You know, if you really dig deep down into the monetary system, how the monetary system works, you can't help but not see it as something other than price. And that's how I look at gold now. I look at silver like it. I look at all my assets like it. We have become so obsessed with the dollar and the pound, and it's sad. I believe it's sad, but it is a way of life. It is what it is. It's down to us to empower ourselves to be a little bit bigger than that and start to look a little bit beyond that now.
Yep.
You reckon?
I mean,
Or am I being a bit of an old fuddy duddy?
no, 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 not at all, not at all, not at all. It's like you said, a lot of people focus on the price, but it kind of defeats the object. I think the first thought I was having there as you were speaking is this is coming from somebody, you, who have done a lot of research on Bitcoin.
Yeah,
And if someone has done a lot of research on Bitcoin, this is intuitive, right? It's
yeah,
perfectly reasonable and normal. But a lot of people, the harsh reality is they don't do the work. They don't put in a good couple of hundred, maybe even 1,000 hours of research. And if you
yeah,
don't do that, then you sit there scratching your head going, well, why doesn't price matter? And what do you
yeah,
mean price doesn't matter? What do you mean there's more than price, right? All
yeah,
that matters is price because you're still stuck in this sort of fiat mindset.
yeah,
So yeah, like when you say this to me, it makes perfect sense. Because like I said earlier, one Bitcoin equals one Bitcoin, right? We're pricing it in dollars because dollars is the next best thing that we have, right? Dollars is how else do we measure it? But the reality is we're pricing it in dollars that are just mathematically guaranteed to continue to be debased over time,
yeah,
which kind of defeats the object. It's like we're pricing this thing in something that we know is going to zero over
yeah,
the long term.
yeah,
And so, yeah, it's kind of a tough one to comprehend if you haven't done the research.
yeah.
But like I said earlier, Bitcoin is many things to many people, and I think it's good to define your goal and then work towards that goal. I think that's the best for everyone because some people will, like I said earlier, will just want to pay their mortgage off. They'll just want to leave a bit to their grandkids. They'll just want to make a quick buck. And it doesn't matter which one of these things you want to use Bitcoin for. But if you don't know where you're going, then it becomes very difficult to measure the success of your journey.
Sure. Um, Probably to expand maybe a more simplistic form of what I was saying was I do believe in price in fiat currency, but I believe in it. I'm a plumbing and heating engineer. I believe in it as in if I come and service your boiler, I will give you a price in the exchange of currency that I'm going to use with you, and then I will do that job, use my time and energy to do that job. Hopefully you like it and it's satisfactory. And then you give me that currency, which happens to be fiat, and give it to me and exchange it. I've got no problem with fiat at all as far as that's concerned, because that's what we need. And out of that, that will buy me my food because my local Tesco's or wherever we go, or I should ask my wife because I don't do it. That's terrible. How chauvinistic is that? Um, yeah. But what was I saying? Yeah, we need fiat, but for me now, all I look at is how can I exchange that into an asset, and then that asset becomes one Bitcoin or half a Bitcoin or 200 Sats or a quarter of an ounce of gold or a tenth of an ounce of gold or 1 ounce of silver or so many shares of what I believe in, or paying off my mortgage to get the asset of the bricks and mortar. It's that mentality now, and whatever I'm exchanging it into, I am human being. I do look at the price, but it's the more I'm going down on the journey, it's just no, I just want to hold. I just, how many shares can I get? How many ounces of gold can I get? How many ounces of silver can I get? And it's all of a sudden, all my spreadsheets are set up more on how many I've got rather than the price. The price is cool. Yeah, it's nice to sit there and go, hee, I'm rich. But then oh, I'm not rich. Please don't take it that way. But I don't see it as fiat existence anymore. And it's been a really, that has made a massive difference to my commitment to building that asset base up, knowing the difference.
Yeah, yeah, completely agree. But again, it goes back to personal
Yeah,
goals,
of
right?
course it does. Yeah.
And I will say this: I do think you're in a much more privileged position
Yeah.
if you're able to say, "Well, I just want to stack Bitcoin,"
Yeah.
because I think a lot of people will be saying, "Well, I need more fiat
Yeah.
because debt, or I need more fiat because I can't afford this, or whatever." So it's like a weird thing, but but yeah, ultimately it comes down to personal goals, right? And if you can if you can do the research, it makes it a lot easier to hold, at least, right?
It it does. And sorry, I'm talking a bit on this one, aren't I?
No, no,
Sorry.
go for it. I want you to.
And the interesting thing is like that, and that's why I've do you know my Whiskey Wednesday on my other channel?
Yeah,
That's why I've started to challenge myself to start stacking from an aspect of I haven't got a lot of money. I haven't got the money to put into, half a Bitcoin, quarter of a Bitcoin, 2,000 sats, or, 10 ounces of silver, or, an ounce of gold every so often. I've challenged myself to practically put myself into the shoes of someone that I've hardly got any money at the end of the month. Is it worth it? And that's my challenge now is to slowly start off with, okay, I'm going to look at that and I'm just going to discipline, which is really hard for me to do. But it's a massive discipline because it keeps my feet on the ground, and hopefully it will show people that there's still value in, even if you've only got 20, 25 pounds at the end of the month, it's worth putting it into a asset possibly of your own choice. But once you dip your finger in the, or your toe in the pond, as I like to call it, then maybe that might instigate you to get a little bit more incentive to learn about what you're doing. And once you start doing that, and if you can see people encouraging you to do that, then all of a sudden, you can just change your life a little bit, maybe.
yeah, and no one should ever underestimate the ability of starting somewhere,
Mm,
for sure. Because I mean, I think it's no secret I'm from a very, very poor background,
yep,
and like I didn't have the ability to buy large quantities of anything initially,
yep,
right? But over time, even if you can say, well, for example, right, in an ideal world, you can afford a good couple of grand a month disposable income, right?
yep.
But not everyone has that luxury. And to be fair, most people don't, which is fine.
I would say
So
99% probably don't.
exactly, exactly, right. So in an ideal world, well, I mean, let's be even more idealistic. In an ideal world, you can buy millions of quid's worth of assets every month, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
like the perfect ideal
yeah,
is you can say, well, I'll buy like 15 Bitcoin, I'll buy 100 ounces of gold, and I'll buy whatever else, right?
yeah,
But most people don't have that luxury. And then as we continue to sort of move more and more towards reality, more and more towards normality, then some people, if you earn slightly more, or maybe you've got less expenses going out, you might be able to say, well, I can afford, X amount a month. I'll put some in Bitcoin, some in gold, some in silver. And the temptation is to say, well, I don't have hardly any money, right? If you're lower down in the earning chain or whatever, or you've got a lot of bills, the temptation is to say, well, I mean, I can only really afford 30 quid a month. Well, you can still buy an ounce of silver for £30 a month.
yeah,
And even if you only have £10 a month to spare, you can buy 10 quid's worth of Bitcoin,
yeah,
right? And so I think a lot of people kind of fall victim to this idea that, well, I don't have enough money to make a difference. Well, I'm here to tell you that if you start small, you will be amazed at what you can do over the long term, right? £10 a month is better than nothing.
yeah,
It's a millionfold better than nothing. And if you can invest £30 a month into an ounce of silver, by the end of the decade, you might be really, really surprised at what a difference that made, right? with a long-term horizon and a little bit of discipline to commit every month to invest something, you really can make a huge, huge, huge difference. And if you're in one of these more privileged positions that has a couple of £100 a month disposable, perhaps, then you can start to buy an ounce or two of silver and a chunk of Bitcoin. And then with a little bit of research and discipline and everything else, you can start to learn to exit somewhere close to the top and buy back somewhere close to the bottom of these longer term cycles. And it is really amazing what you can achieve over the long term with seemingly insignificant sums of money, right?
Yeah,
So I would certainly say to anyone that, you're probably going to spend £30 a month on takeaway for your average person.
absolutely.
A lot of people will spend £200 a month on a pair of trainers or clothes or night outs drinking, fucking 150 Jaeger bombs in the nightclub. Just swap that for buying some Bitcoin and some silver, right? Or like save up for a couple of months and buy an ounce of gold.
Yeah,
And you'll be really, really, really surprised over the long term what a massive difference that makes. And it also slowly but surely trains good habits. It trains financial discipline. It trains the muscle memory to invest every month when you get paid, right? You get paid some for bills, some for me, some for investments. And again, over the long term, this stuff makes a really, really, really big difference.
massive. And it gets a little bit, it gets a little bit, I get a little bit frustrated because sometimes you might have heard on my channel before, I get very proud of what I do, obviously, and everyone should do. We all get very proud. And sometimes I can't do it anymore because it's all gone into safe storage. But um, sometimes I used to get some of my stack out and bits and pieces, and I used to feel really proud, do a nice video on it, and just say, "Oh yeah, look at all these and bits and pieces." But shit, I used to feel really guilty. I felt so guilty because I was thinking, well, I'm sure there's some people out there that would die to even think I would like a piece of that. And I used to think, oh shit, I've really got to try and rein this in a little bit and just be a little bit realistic. But what I've tried to do is try to amalgamate a message within it, and try and keep away from that. Oh, look what I've got! Look, it's great. Ego, tickle my ego. Love me, love me, love me. Look what I've got. To what I'm doing recently, going back to the basics and try and discipline myself and show people that I can do it every month and sorry, every week on the Whiskey Wednesday, just 1 ounce of silver every week. Some people might be only do it for once a month, and hopefully a few people will get on the bandwagon and might make a bit of a change for them, but hopefully they go out there and learn something. I can't do the learning. I'm not your daddy. We spoke about this earlier. I'm not everyone's daddy. I'd love to be everyone's daddy. I love being a daddy, but yeah, you just can't be. You can't be, but you can show people. Show
Yeah, I
people.
mean, everything is relative as well,
Yeah,
right?
of course it is.
Everything is relative because I remember going back a few months ago, a Twitter account called Bob Lucas, who
Yep.
is also a cycle trader. He posted something along the lines of one of his friends is really happy with, and then he put, quote, 600 shares of Ethereum doing really well, right? And the funny thing about this is all the comments were like, what do you mean? Like 600 shares? And again, it goes to show just how relative all of this stuff is, right? This guy has a 1.8 million ish position in Ethereum, and he doesn't know that they're not shares,
Man.
right? And so all of the comments were sort of lighting this guy up. Like,
Yeah.
what does he mean shares? Doesn't he know he holds a cryptocurrency? Doesn't he know it's a coin? Doesn't he know
Yeah.
this, that, and the other? Right. But again, it's all relative, right? If your net worth is like 2 billion,
Yeah.
then having a 1.8 million position in Ethereum is,
Yeah.
it's nothing, right? It's nothing. It's
Pocket
money you can
change.
afford to light on fire.
Yeah.
But the key is not to look at other people's situation and say,
Yeah.
wow, that guy's got more money than me, that guy's got a bigger boat than me, that guy's
Yeah.
got whatever. The key is to look at yourself relative to yourself 12 months ago,
Yeah.
right? If 12 months ago you had nothing and now today, 12 months later, you've got 10 ounces of silver, well, that is better than having nothing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And 10 ounces of silver might not be anything to a billionaire who can buy multiple tons in one go without even really denting the bank. but you're not a billionaire,
Yep.
right? So I think the biggest key point is not to worry about everyone else, but instead to look at yourself 12 months ago and say, have I done better than that? And so long as you can keep improving every 12 months, again, with a longer term view and compound interest, it is amazingly surprising what you can achieve 5, 6, 7 years out.
Uh, Unbelievable. And little plug for the podcast here. Keep an eye out on the What podcast because I'm slowly starting to do some videos with people's stories, mainly creators. At the moment, just on the precious metal side, just from curiosity, their backgrounds, from where they were, and a bit of a life story to how they got into gold, silver, whatever they do, whatever they want to reveal. And that's quite inspiring as well because it's just not me going on about it, it's others sharing their stories. And I think that's so powerful, so powerful.
Yep, 100%. Who have you got coming on? Do you want to shout them out?
I've just done one last night. Obviously, Cobra stories on there, which is quite
Yeah.
interesting, very interesting. Darth, I've just done Darth. And it was quite interesting with Darth Precious
Is that
Metals.
uploaded?
I haven't uploaded it. I did it last
Oh,
night,
okay.
mate. I
Okay,
did it
okay.
last night. So I don't rush for those. I try and get a few together. Obviously, it's a bit time consuming doing everything, but I've got that one to sort out. Darth's really interesting because I'm not going to go into it too much, but he was born in Transylvania. And no, he's not a vampire. He says that actually. He said everyone should know that's where Dracula's from. But I didn't know that was part of Romania. And he was born in the very early communist days before it went into the European Union moved into Romania and the communist side. And it was a really interesting story listening to him growing up. Up to today, how he ended up in Great Britain, and Shiny Precious Metals is going to come on. What I would like to, he's really interesting. Got a fascinating journey he's got. Um, yeah, yeah, his one's really interesting indeed. I want to get 365 on there, but he keeps ducking out. I want some young people. Anyone out there listening? I really want some young people's perspective on what they're doing. Future investment.
Gordy might be up for it.
Who?
Gordy?
Gordy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I keep putting it out there. I can only ask, and
He might
hopefully
or he
people
might
will
not. I
join.
don't know. He's a bit of a weird dude. But
Yeah, yeah,
I can say this. I can say this because he's my best
this
friend.
is your mate, isn't he?
Yeah, yeah. Um,
Yeah, it'd be nice to get some younger people and get their reasons why they've got into doing what they're doing.
his story will be quite interesting, I think.
Yeah,
But whether you can get him on or not remains to be
yeah.
seen.
Chem's another one, but I also want to reach out
Ken
to
will be up for it anytime. I'm sure of that.
yeah, yeah. He said he was, but we do a bit of work in the background and make sure everyone. My whole aim is to make people comfortable, and the more I can start pushing them out, and hopefully people can start. Oh, crikey, that seemed fairly easy. That was a pretty relaxed sort of conversation. It might
Yeah.
encourage others to get on, and that'd be a great way to, for people to sit there and go, yeah, my story's similar to that or whatever, and might encourage people to do whatever they need to do, which is what it's all about, really,
Yeah. Yeah.
more than anything. But yeah, anyone, I don't mind. You can talk about anything, really. This the whole thing. This podcast is for people for being expressive and open. I know everyone likes the finance side, but the religious one. That you and Cobra had was a fascinating observation for me, and quite a few people like that. It's a great subject, but it's all relevant. It's relevant to everything we do in life, so
Do
relevant.
you want to take it somewhere spiritual to finish off the conversation?
Go for it.
What, you leaving it on me?
Yeah, yeah. You said, do you want to take it somewhere spiritual to finish the conversation off? So you was going to ask me something. Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
okay. Okay.
Is that what you
Okay.
meant?
Yeah, it is. It is more or less. Yeah.
Okay, let's go down a.
I just wasn't expecting you to stop dead and be like, yeah, go on then.
Oh, that's because I was chatting away and I wasn't expecting you to say anything yet. But and then you
um,
said that, and I thought, oh, he's had a light bulb moment.
yeah, go on then. So, I don't know what to ask now. I've frozen up.
That's put you on the spot, hasn't it?
It has. Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, let's put it this way. Do you think there's a spiritual component to our existence?
Wow. Do you know you said to wrap it up?
Yeah.
That's not going to wrap it up, mate.
Well, we can leave it open for next week.
Okay. Very briefly, I would say that I've had too many personal experiences in my life to disagree or say that there isn't a spiritual component to my life. And if I believe there isn't one for my life, then I'd be very hypocritical to say that there isn't a spiritual component to everybody's life. But for me personally, yeah, dude, yeah, for sure. I've witnessed too many things. Um, in this, I've got to say, like we're opening up the rabbit hole when I say in this lifetime. Yeah, I've just experienced too many things that I can't explain. And over time, and I would say personally that it isn't until probably the latter part of my years, if of the years I've had so far on this earth. This is getting very spiritual talk, isn't it now? Um, I would say I haven't really realized or had time to reflect to the enormity of actually believing, oh my OMG, there's a little bit more going on that I actually thought was going on, and so many dots have started to join, and make lots of deep, heartfelt, just I don't know what the word is. I hate the words really when I try and explain this because words don't really explain it. Uh, Answers to lots of questions that I've had all my life, if that makes sense at all.
Yeah, absolutely makes sense. I think that we absolutely are in a spiritual construct.
Mm.
And I think that some people are very fortunate because some people can recognize it. But I think that a large portion of this trap is that it's very easy to get distracted by the 3D. It's very easy to get distracted by the physical. And it's very easy to focus on a bunch of stuff that negates or ignores the spiritual component. But I think for people that are willing to be open to it, for people that are willing to entertain it, then there's a whole new realm beyond the physical that is absolutely full of joy and love and bliss. And I would suggest that anyone that can be open to it, do be open to it, at least to try, right? If you try it out and it doesn't agree with you or you don't see any evidence of it, then that's fine. That's your experience. But I think most people, if they open themselves up to it, will be handsomely rewarded.
Oh, 100%. It's a massive journey. I think I slung something on Twitter the other day. I can't remember what it was. It was along the lines of when you know there's nothing, it's the start of a journey to knowing that there's nothing. If that does that make sense to you?
Say that bit again. If you stop the journey,
When you know there's a nothing, it's a start of a journey to knowing there's a nothing.
knowing there's a nothing. What do you mean by knowing there's a nothing?
Well, a lot of people would just say if nothing is nothing, it's just nothing.
Yeah.
But when you know there's a nothing, it's a trap of words, isn't it? When you know that there is a nothing, then there is something because there's a nothing.
Because
You
there can't be
understand?
nothing. Because there can't be nothing with consciousness, right? If there's something to
Exactly.
observe it, then there's not nothing.
Exactly. But if you know there's nothing, then nothing exists. So all of a sudden, something that pronounced in words that means it doesn't exist, but actually it does exist because you know there's nothing.
Yeah.
It's a real bit of a tongue twister, but that is a journey that I simply put down to. You might have heard me say to you during conversation, if you can shut the noise out, then you understand that you exist. Because to many people, shutting the noise out, there's nothing there,
Yep.
and
I
that's what I mean.
Yeah, I'm such a huge proponent of this.
Yeah,
But if you if you can learn to quiet your mind, and if you
yeah,
can learn to just take some time to sit back and relax and focus on your breathing, what you'll notice is there is an awareness,
yeah,
right? And that awareness transcends. That's kind of I don't want to use that word, but
yeah. I
the
know
awareness is beyond who you
words.
identify with,
Yeah,
right? Oh, I'm Camel. I'm 55 years old. I'm a trader, right? I live in London, right? All of that stuff is not really you, in my
yeah,
humble opinion, right? All of that stuff can be changed. Like you can change your name. I could become Llama instead of Camel, right? I can move from London to a different city. I can change my job from a trader to an accountant.
yeah,
And so none of that stuff is really you. But who you are becomes quite obvious when you can sit down and be quiet and focus on your breathing, and then start to realize that your consciousness, your ability to observe this world, your ability to be objectively aware that you are awareness
yeah,
suddenly takes over. And when you can focus on that, you start to realize that there is no limit to this awareness. And the limit that you put on yourself by saying, I'm Carol, I'm 55, I'm a trader from London, like none of that stuff is really who you really are. Who you really are seems to be a much more spiritual component, and somebody that is capable of much more, somebody that probably has a longevity significantly beyond your 81-year life expectancy. And I would vastly encourage anyone to play around with this and see what they experience, because I really think there's a lot to that.
oh, it's weird. The very first time I experienced anything like that through what again, I hate words. I hate words and labels, but we live in this world where we use words and labels. The very first time I experienced that at a proper level of awareness, of consciousness in complete and utter silence, which took a lot of work to get to, I shit myself. And the reason
Literally.
why no, I didn't shit myself, literally.
Okay.
Sorry.
Sorry, I'm being a dick.
No, 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 no. That actually made me laugh. And I'm really pleased you said that. It's really cool. No, no, I shit myself because I realized the enormity of, oh my God, I'm more than just this. And I've never forgot that experience. And I strive all the time to try and get as close to that as possible in any which way that I can. It was such a moving experience where I didn't think that you could be totally, this sounds really weird and strange, but I didn't think I could experience anything greater. I spoke about holding my first child, didn't I?
Yeah.
I didn't think I could experience anything greater in life than that experience. It was so weird, so strange, but so beautiful and lovely. And from that very day, Camel, um, my whole concept on existence and how I attach myself to fear and love and all the different emotions changed. Because all of a sudden I realized to myself that, oh, there's more to just looking at people, listening to people, or whatever. Um, there's so much more to this, and that took me down a continued self appreciation that everything I see, hear, touch, feel is just one level of an experience. The real, the real true level of experience is what I'm trying uh, to experience at a different level now. It's really interesting, really fascinating. It's so calm and it's lovely, beautiful,
Yeah, for
amazing,
sure.
absolutely
Yeah, for sure.
amazing.
We seem to be immortals passing through this construct, and we seem to have great ability to be able to influence this
Mm,
construct, at least in my own personal experience.
yeah,
And I think it all starts with, first of all, creating that awareness, right? When you start to realize that there is more to you than you, and the world might not be exactly what it seems.
Yeah.
then you can play around with that and you can have your own experiences. And only through experiencing can you really build an understanding or a knowledge of this stuff, right? Because it's one thing to hear Camel say this and then you go, okay, well, it doesn't really resonate with me. But only when you sit down and put in the work and experience this for yourself do you start to become convinced or not convinced, right? Maybe you don't have that experience, but I would argue that if you sit down and dedicate the time to it and realize that the world is not what it seems
Yeah.
and you are more than you think you are, right?
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, you start to play around with this stuff, you start to dedicate some time to it, and then it gets to a point eventually, at least in my own experience, and I'm pretty sure in yours too, that you become completely convinced that there is more to it, right? And you are not just the physical manifestation that you think you are, and the world might be more malleable than we are told it is.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's one of those things you do have to experience, you do have to play around with it. And I would say for sure, feel free to be skeptical of it, right? You don't have to
Oh
approach
my
this with some
God,
kind of
yeah.
blind faith. You can approach this as with as much skepticism as you really desire. And I would almost encourage that in a way, right? Be skeptical, but at the same time, be open. When
Yeah.
evidence presents, don't ignore it. Don't try
Yeah.
to chalk it up to coincidence or whatever else. Just be open to all possible outcomes,
Yeah.
and the more you play around with it, the more I think you will realize that there is more to you than you think there is,
Yeah.
and that this world is more malleable than we think it is as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it plays around with your ego a little bit because on various aspects. I'll have to talk about my journey one day, but on various times you start to think, oh my God, I'm a bit special if I've experienced this. And then you sort of go slap yourself around the face and go, fuck off, you're not that special. Jesus Christ. Because like I put myself in the real world and I just think, well, there's nothing special about you. But it's really humbling to know. But that's I love it. I love the egotistical up and downs of life because you learn. You're constantly learning about yourself. I like the fact that I can be a prick. I like the fact that I can be a complete dickhead sometimes. I don't like the fact if after the fact of being a dickhead or a prick, I feel really bad because I've upset someone. I don't like that. I don't like that. But I've gone through that experience and I do something about it afterwards, you know. And that's all part of that growth process. Total. So that defines you. What you do with your experiences defines you all through this life. Um, I let you into. I've never told anyone this other than one person. And that was my mother, bless her, when she was alive. But this weird experience for me, dude, started when I was really young. And I remember a lot of people are going to switch off to this and think I'm a right freak, but I don't care. When I was really young, I used to be terribly scared of the dark. I mean, when I was talking about, I uh, probably three, four, I would hate it. I remember my parents putting me to bed, my mum really put me to bed, and it was just like, oh, leave the door open, don't turn the landing light off, please can I have the light on? I was petrified, absolutely petrified of the dark. And my mum would say, "Oh, Dad, don't be silly. No one's going to hurt you." And then my sisters would be going, "The bogeyman's outside." All the hype and all that shit made it all worse. But I used to lay in bed sometimes, and from a ridiculously early age, shapes used to appear on my wall, and I used to like really get freaked by it, totally freaked by it, until all of a sudden, if you can imagine in a sci-fi movie a round circular vortex of matter spinning round in the wall. I used to see that on a regular basis, almost every night. And I had no idea what it was. I had no clue what it was. I used to call my mum and say, "Mum, it's on the wall again. It's on the wall again." And I wasn't delusional. It didn't matter whether the landing light was on, the door was open. It always used to appear. And that happened for about a year. And that was really weird. And I've never forgot it. It's only recently through certain quiet times that I've had through meditation, that those sort of experiences have come back to me. I've never understood what it was. I don't know what it was, but it was obviously some sort of relevance to a young part of my life. And then every now and then strange things have happened throughout my life. And like you said a little while ago, I've never veered away from it. I've always been curious. I've always wanted to live like, oh, what are mediums all about? What are seances all about? What's the spooky side of life all about? What's the big deal over this, And various parts of my life, which I'll talk about one day, I've experienced some really weird shit, really strange. Yeah, I might be a bit of a nutter. Maybe it was all a little bit weird, but I don't believe that. Um, but again, it's interesting, and it isn't till the back end of my life that all this has become a little bit more apparent, and it's calmed me down. And I can say honestly that I'm I'm probably for the first time in my life not afraid of death. I've accepted it. What I don't, obviously, from a human point of view, I would say I don't particularly want to be in agony because who likes pain? No one likes pain, do they? But from the actual fact of feeling that a lot of people say, "Oh, I want to live as long as possible. There's only one time." I don't feel that. I feel that my time is my time. When I go, I go. I'm going to do the best I can while I'm here. And that could be tomorrow, it could be in an hour, it could be in the next 20 years. But it's not something I'm paranoid about. It's really nice. It's a nice position to be in when you're sitting there spiritually, physically. Yeah, I'm quite happy. And we're going to try and do the best we can do for whatever time we've got left. There we go. I've got that off my chest, haven't I?
You saying that reminded me of a NASA study.
Yeah.
And the NASA study was conducted in the 60s. You can look this up, right?
Okay.
And NASA set out to try to find creative geniuses
Okay.
because they wanted to know if they could screen for geniuses and then recruit those geniuses to NASA.
Yeah.
And instead of use IQ, which is like the traditional metric, but it is very limited in
Yeah.
its ability because it basically only IQ only really measures pattern recognition and logic,
Yeah.
right? And it's not ideal for astronauts because you also need emotional intelligence, EQ.
Sure.
Um, for example, if you're really good at maths and logic and pattern recognition, but you're going to melt down and murder everyone in the spaceship, then that's not an ideal criteria for an astronaut, right? So anyway, they created this new criteria for what they termed a creative genius, and a creative genius is defined as somebody that is able to use their creative imagination to problem solve, right? And so NASA developed this criteria, and then they started with 5-year-olds, and they looked at a bunch of 5-year-olds, and then they did every other age up to young adults, right? And what they found was for 5-year-olds, 98% of 5-year-olds met this criteria for creative genius, right? But then every age that you go up, every year in age you go up, what you
Yeah.
find is that number deteriorates up until you get to 18, where less than 2% of 18-year-olds meet the criteria for a creative genius,
Yeah.
right? And so the only conclusion they could draw from this study was that school destroys the ability
Yeah.
for people to use their creative imagination to problem solve, which
Yeah.
kind of makes sense when you think about it, because they put you in school and they tell you to copy from textbooks. And if you don't want to do that, or you can't sit still, or you shout out, then you're in trouble and you've got to go and stand outside or whatever. But it reminds me of that entirely when you were saying about the experiences you had as a child,
Yeah.
because it kind of fits this whole idea that as children we have yet to receive the amount of programming, conditioning. We haven't watched as many TV programs, movies. We haven't
Yeah.
had the kind of conversations with adults and all that kind of stuff. So as a child you're probably underexposed to societal programming, right?
Yeah.
Societal conditioning, and thus your imagination, your potential to impact your environment, your spiritual energy is quite high. And then over years and years and years of sitting in school and being institutionalized and watching the TV and interacting with all these adults that are already pre-programmed and they tell you that life is the way it is and blah blah blah, you eventually find yourself in that 2% group, or rather the 98% group of adults that no longer meets the criteria to be considered creative genius, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
as you were telling me that, I kind of like the first thing I could think of was this NASA study, like I said, and I absolutely believe that's the case because when it's funny, whenever I speak to my mum about this, right, my mum always complained that unlike my brothers, I would not sit in front of a television as a
Yeah.
child. And I was always a problem child at school. I was always sent out of school, and I missed a whole heap of lessons that all of my peers would go to. And, I was just sort of, what do you call it, textbook problem child, right?
Yeah.
But then I look back at this later in life and I go, well, that actually seemed to be a blessing in disguise, right?
Yeah.
I've seen almost no films, I've seen almost no TV, I haven't seen any Disney movies. I didn't get a normal education because I couldn't pay attention in school and I was always the naughty kid that was sent out. And now I look at my life now and I go, well, now I'm kind of free to do my own thing. And maybe it's coincidence, maybe the two aren't related, but I've always wondered if instead of be this kind of ADHD kid that can't sit still and can't be in normal lessons and can't sit there and watch movies, if instead of be that, I was able to sit and be programmed by the Disney movies and the TV and the schooling system, maybe I wouldn't have ended up where I am today, right? Maybe I wouldn't have ended up being able to go my own way, and maybe I would have been way more institutionalized, so to speak, way less
Yeah.
spiritual. Um, so yeah, it's certainly something I would consider or I should say, I have considered as I've always wondered if that was a factor, right? My lack of ability to sit through films and through school. I always wondered if maybe that worked out as an advantage in the long term.
Yeah.
And certainly based on that NASA study I just mentioned, it would suggest it does. And you also mentioned about no fear of death through
Yeah.
this idea of realizing that you
Yeah.
are, I don't think you said these words exactly, but like an immortal spirit, right? You're more
Yes.
than you are. That's how I view myself, right? I
Yeah.
think I'm just passing through this construct and that life goes on beyond this, right? I don't really feel like I have the fear of death because likely this isn't my real home,
Yeah.
so to speak. So I think that's super powerful for sure. And it's a real freedom that comes with recognizing your true power and who you really are. And again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier about not identifying as Camel, the 55-year-old trader from London, right?
Yeah.
All of that stuff is subject to change. You can change your name even, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But realizing that you are more than that and you are an immortal spirit is completely creates an environment for being free of that fear of death. And there's nothing more empowering, right?
Yeah, it's weird because all the time you're talking, I'm just I don't know why we're having this conversation, but we're having it. So for whatever reason, we're having it. But it's quite humbling, really, because like you're chatting away, and like that's instigated my journey in my head now, and I'm just sitting there thinking, well, that's wow, because I didn't, I didn't detest school. What I liked about school was to be with people that I could be creative with. What I detested was sitting there, sitting still, um, and just listening to someone rabbit on about whatever. I was constantly having a blackball brush thrown at me because I was just staring outside. I was always told I was a waster and a daydreamer, and but the window outside of the window of every room that I was in was freedom to me, always freedom. I wasn't. I just was never. I've never. I mean, I'm just sitting there thinking. You got me thinking now, and probably all through most of my life, I've never been really happy in a orchestrated teaching environment where I can't be free to express the beauty of what I think is freedom. And that's all been a part of me. And probably when I look back over my life, I've explored that in many different angles through religion, through spiritual, through mediumship, through seances, through spooky things, through all sorts of whatever relationships, I've always come to the same conclusion that I've now realized that there's more to this actual 3D world than what we're taught and indoctrinated from a very early age to believe. And it's fascinating. I'm loving it, and it's really weird that I'm actually passing this on. Probably if any of my sisters watch this, they'd be horrified um, from what I'm saying because I've probably kept a lot of it for many, many years inside of me because you don't want to feel the problem I've always found with the way we've been brought up as a rule is we're never, you're right, we're never allowed to be free from an early age. It's you need to do this, you need to do that, you mustn't do this, you mustn't do that. This is what you need to do. Darth brought it out brilliantly in yesterday's podcast. You've got to learn this to get on in life. You need to do this to do that. Well, I'll probably have more success outside of by being creative and free thinking and doing what I need to do, what feels good, not just financially, but from relationships, from being a good dad. What I feel has been a good dad. Yeah, I've been a bastard sometimes and I've been a pig and whatever, but that's cool. I've recognized it. But I've definitely learned more in my life by being a bit more freer than what we are. And I just think I've just totally rebelled or never been really comfortable with having shekels put on me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And it reminds me of the prodigal son, right? And I really think the prodigal son is probably the best analogy for our experience here, right? So the prodigal son, you've got two brothers, right? One just blindly complies and follows the instructions and continues to live a normal life, right? And then you've got the prodigal son that says, no, 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 I know better. I'm going to go away. And so he takes his money and he goes away and he, sleeps with prostitutes and squanders his money and gambles and does all this stuff that he's not supposed to do, right? But the point is, he goes on his own path and he has to suffer the repercussions of his bad actions, right? So he gambles all his money away, squanders it, and sleeps with these prostitutes. And then he ends up finding himself in a situation where now suddenly he's paying the karma for his actions, right? Now suddenly he's got no money, he's hungry, he has squandered all of his money, and he has to humble himself and go back to his father, right? And he thinks at the time, well, maybe if I can go back and offer myself as a servant, I can eat the crumbs from under the table, and at least I'll have bread and board.
Yeah.
And then he goes back to his father and he is welcomed with open arms for returning. He's thrown a banquet and celebrated for coming back. And I really think that's one of the best analogies for our existence, right? Like
Mm,
he he thought for himself, he went away, he made a bunch of bad decisions, right? He suffered the karma for those bad decisions by being hungry, by having no money, by having no home, by having to humble himself and come back. But notice how out of the two brothers, the one that stayed there and blindly complied never gets a banquet thrown for them, never gets celebrated, never
yeah.
gets welcomed back with open arms. But the prodigal son that goes his own way, makes the mistake, suffers the karma, humbles himself, and comes back. He's the one that's thrown the party. He's the one that's thrown the banquet. And I really believe that this analogy is super applicable to our existence, right?
Yeah.
If you go your own way, you can make your own mistakes. If you suffer, if you make some bad decisions along the way, you'll suffer natural law. You'll suffer the karma for those bad decisions.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it will lead you to a place of going, well, okay, I understand the right from wrong. I understand what I did right and what I didn't. And now I have to humble myself and come back to the correct way and live a normal and nice life. And in doing so, you get celebrated for at least going out there and experiencing something that the people that blindly comply never get to.
Yeah.
And I think there's immense power in that because I believe that's ultimately what we're here to do, to have experience and to try a bunch of different things and to learn from those experiences. Because if you don't have these experiences, if you don't kind of go wrong at some point in your life, then you never know the difference between right and wrong, right? If you just blindly comply and blindly follow orders, then you never get the banquet thrown for you. But
Absolutely.
if you go
Yeah.
your own way and you make your own decisions and you suffer the karma, you learn, you gain experience, and then from that you can come back stronger. And ultimately, that seems to be celebrated.
Yeah. Wow. That's what? How did we get there? I've been
I don't know.
talking
We were
about
talking about Bitcoin, and then the next thing you know, here we are.
talking about whirly things on my what. I would imagine. I'm really apologize to anyone that's watching this and thinking, "Oh my God, CPM's totally lost the plot."
Not at all. Not at all. Not compared to Crackhead Camel, right? Like,
We
you're
love
always safe around Crackhead Camel.
crackhead camel. We love it. We love it. Love it. Oh man, it's a subject that I'm slow. Do you know? Okay, I won't go on about it too much. But the other most powerful thing in the world that anybody can do is express themselves. Because when I first started my channel, um, I don't know why I did it, but I did it. I don't know where the inspiration come from, but I don't know. I don't know whether it was just an egotistical thing. I have no idea. It was a journey. I just plucked up the courage and went for it. And now I absolutely love it. I absolutely love it, and I love the people I'm meeting. I love the journey. I'm loving the experience. I'm loving what I'm learning. I'm loving what I'm observing, and I'm growing as a human being faster at my age than I've done. I've felt probably for the best part of 50 odd years. I've just been suppressed. And now I feel so free, and that's all because of this, all because of the having the channels, and it's allowing me to express myself how I want to without the stupid, egotistical, humiliative being what's the word I'm looking for? Making myself look a prick. There's probably a better word to say. Um, I don't care. It's freedom, and it's what I was trying to explain earlier. It's an outlet, and I would encourage anybody to, if they feel the need or feeling homed in, obviously be you, do it how you want to do. Hopefully, you do it in a good way. But it's so cool. It is really cool because it's just a release of energy that allows you to express yourself and probably be a better you.
Yep. And we're all on that journey, right? We're all on that
Yep.
journey of self-improvement. Well, I mean, we're not all actually, if we're honest. A lot of people just go about their lives and they never even think about this higher purpose, or
Yeah.
they never really think about there being more to life than it seems. And I mean, that's fine. I'm not here to judge those people at all. But if you're listening to this podcast, if these are the kind of conversations you enjoy to listen to, then you're probably called to a higher purpose, right? You're probably at least called to try to realize who you are or
Yeah.
what you're doing here. And you probably have a more inquisitive mind. And yeah, far be it from me to judge people that just go about their normal lives doing their normal thing, right? It's by no means me saying I'm right and they're wrong or anything like that. But if you find yourself in these circles and you find yourself asking these questions and you find yourself resonating with some of the conversations, then, maybe it is a sign that there is more to life, right? There
Yeah,
is more to this
definitely.
existence than it seems. There's more to you than it seems. And in my own personal experience, the more I've embraced that, the better life has got, not just in the physical world, but in my mental and spiritual world as well. And I know my wife has embraced a lot of this, and we've both grown a lot together. And you really have nothing to lose by exploring this kind of thing,
You
right? If you
don't, do you?
explore it, if you try it and you explore it and it doesn't work for you, well, fine. Okay, you tried, nothing lost, right? Nothing gained. But if you try it and suddenly you realize that the world is not what it seems and you are more than what you thought you were, then I mean you have everything to gain and nothing to lose, right? So
Uh, uh,
certainly something I would recommend people at least play with.
yeah, play with it, and that's the great thing, the great way of putting it. Play with, and I think that what the more I've well, yeah, definitely since I've started this podcast and I've started being a little bit different on my other channel, um, it's amazed me of the amount of people that it's attracted talking the same sort of stuff all of a sudden. So that can only be gain, gain, gain for everybody involved.
Yeah, for sure. But it seems that we live in this world where the more energy and attention you put on something, the more it is reflected as conditions and circumstances. So if you're going to start to embrace this stuff, there's a good chance you're going to see more of it reflected in your reality, right? And like I said to you earlier, I think off camera, like when the student is ready, the teacher becomes available. And I think there's absolute power in that, because the more open you are to this kind of stuff, the more you will see that the information becomes available to you. The more you
Yeah,
play around with this stuff, the more you experience this stuff, the more it will seemingly unlock and the more it will confirm your suspicions the entire time.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I can almost imagine, there's just two of us on here at the moment, having eight different screens and just a general conversation around certain things in the future. I think yeah, it's really cool. Really cool. Really
Certainly is my
cool.
brother.
Sorry?
Certainly is my brother.
Yeah. Cheers, mate. Yeah, is there anything else you want to go? We've been rabbiting on for ages.
Going to talk about Joe Biden's earlobes.
Ooh.
Nah, we'll save that for next week.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How
No,
long has
mate.
it been?
Well, probably, I don't know. They've took the time off the Zoom thing now. But we've been going for recording about an hour and a half, roughly.
Okay. All right.
But
Well,
we was talking for quite a bit beforehand. We got a bit carried away, didn't
yeah,
we?
I think we were talking for like an hour before, but
All
anyway,
right,
that's
okay.
cool. That's fine.
Yeah, it was all right. No, it's
Um,
interesting. A lot of people have got to know me a little bit more. A lot of people got to know you a little bit more. I find it difficult for me personally on the What podcast. I always wanted to try and stay as neutral as I could,
yeah.
personally, just because of from a host point of view, because I don't want to put my personal context and experience into it because that might scare a few people to come on and talk about what they want to talk, But I will say to everyone, listen, I will totally hold myself to this is a free space for anybody to have whatever opinion they want, as long as we keep it clean and good, to express themselves, and I will not judge anybody for it. This is for you to come on and talk and hopefully produce really good free thinking conversation, which so far it's been very successful at doing.
Yeah, I think you've done a really, really, really good job, to be honest, mate. And yeah, get a few more guests on and maybe even entertain a Royal Rumble at one point, right? Get like
Well,
7 or 8
Rumble.
guests on it all at the same time.
Yeah,
See what
exactly.
happens. See what
Yeah,
happens. I know it's easier to say that than it is to do it because a bunch of people are happy to say they will come on, but then don't want to come on.
yeah,
Um, but but yeah, if you can make it happen, right? If you can find the people that are up for it, then who knows what can happen.
yeah. I think probably one of the things I've learned is to produce something like that. I've got to be consistent for a while and keep plodding away to show people that this is a safe space and it is a welcoming space. And I think as long as I can be consistent with that, and that obviously for you, Cobra, all the people that regularly come on it, and hopefully that people will see that, yeah, that's a cool place to go. I want it to be a cool place to go. The place where I meet my mates down a pub. I want that on the internet, basically, to have a good conversation, or a restaurant, that sort of experience. Not quite the same, but it
Yeah, for
could be.
sure. I
It could be if we wanted it to be.
I reckon I can get Gordy on. I reckon.
Yeah, it'd be good.
I don't know if 365's down for it or not. I
Yeah,
know he says he is a lot, but I don't know if he. I don't know
yeah,
if.
I think with 360, I don't know. I
I'd love to
think,
do one with 365. To be fair.
yeah, I would as well, because he's a fascinating person to watch and observe, and I've got a fairly good dialogue with him outside ish of YouTube. Um, but he's built up his what he's doing, and he's very good at what he's doing. But I think he's got a probably a really lovely story to tell. But that's he's got to be comfortable at the end of the day, hasn't he? So it's up to him.
Yep. Yep. Well, knowing Gordy, if you give him a couple of rums, he'll come on.
Yeah, it'd
So
be cool.
that'd be Gordy, and
Yeah.
then oh, I'm sure Darth's always up for it, right?
Darth is, yeah, yeah, definitely. There's a few. To be
And
honest, there's
what's
probably
that?
a
I
few
forget her
people.
name. There's a female stacker
Oh
recently.
yes, yeah, she's expressed an interest to come on. But I've just got. I don't want to push anybody. I can put it out there,
Nah,
and
push him hard.
yeah, I should do really. I should reach out a little bit
Gun
more
to
than
the
what I do.
head.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, she would. It would love. It would be so cool to get a female voice on here.
Your time is now. That's it, isn't it?
That's it. Yeah, Guna
Yeah.
Girl. Guna Girl.
Gonna go.
She's
Okay.
a really nice lady. Um, yeah, seems to get on. Her and Gordy at the same time would be really cool. They seem to get on get on well. And
Yeah, I'll get Gordy on it.
yeah,
I'll grab Gordy for you.
that'd be interesting conversation. Get Cobra
He
on there, make it a bit fiery.
he's really happy. He just had a video hit 1.2K views the other day,
Yeah, I saw that.
which for a channel with 130 subscribers is really good.
It is really cool. It's so nice to see that enthusiasm in new people doing what they're doing.
Yeah,
And it seems to be in this country, it seems to be getting more and more, which is really cool to see. And this is where I admire 365. He really pushes that on his channel. He's always pushing out. I mean, if it wasn't for him, sometimes promoting another channel, I wouldn't have found Your Time Is Now, Guna Girl, because he promoted her, and obviously that promotion popped up, and that made me click on her channel. I thought, wow, a female on there, how cool! I like what she was doing, and yeah, started to interact a little bit. So yeah, it's really cool, really good.
yeah, it's really interesting to see the stacker community just explode out of nowhere in the
Hmm.
UK.
Yeah,
But I would imagine it's going to keep happening because gold is in a bull market, right? And gold and silver are going to keep going up over the rest of this decade. Sure, there's going to be pullbacks along the way.
yeah,
But, you know, conceivably, we're going to be at double the prices we are now in a couple of years' time.
yeah,
And as price goes up, people are going to get more and more interested in it, and it's going to draw more eyes to the space.
yeah,
So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how it progresses from here.
yeah.
It's really an awesome community too. Everyone seems to have each other's back and be really supportive of each other. So
Hmm.
cool to see.
Yeah, for sure. Mate, personally, I'm dead excited about where gold, silver, and Bitcoin's going. Dead excited. I do keep my feet on the ground with it all, but I'm dead excited.
It's
Dead
going
excited.
so far beyond everyone's expectations.
And it's so cool to have a part of it all.
Yeah, yeah,
I love it. Really proud of myself. Really am. It's
yeah.
good. And hopefully, lots of people do the same with any luck. And hopefully, it all works out. So, dude, well, I didn't think we'd go down that line. That's a great sign of this channel. It just naturally flows. It is literally like I'm talking to you in the same room when
Yeah.
you're on. Same with Cobra. Same with anybody. The conversations I had last night. It is so cool. It is literally. It's bringing a lot of faith into the virtual world for me because I'm very old school. Very old school. I do prefer to be down the pub, chatting to someone in person, but this is the next best thing. It's great. I want to say I can't thank you enough.
Well, thanks for having me, mate. I really appreciate it. And yeah, this is how I wind down from the week, to be honest. I think I was saying to you earlier, like this is it's like having a pint with your mate in the pub, and yeah, it's really nice. So thanks for having me. And I love the way that these conversations. I mean, we didn't have any plan today, did we at all?
Absolutely none.
And
At one point, I didn't think it was going to happen because we were so embroiled in the conversation outside of this.
yeah, we were just chatting away, and then I
Yeah.
said, yeah, we better hit record at some point, and
Yes.
yeah, but we'll find something to talk about. I'm sure we could do this for 10 hours if we needed to.
Ah,
So yeah,
mate. Yeah,
and
for sure. For
yeah, it's just
sure.
great. It's just great. Like I said, this is how I wind down. I like to have a few rums, and this Kraken Black Sprite, can't even speak. You can tell how much I've had, right? This Kraken Black spiced rum is really like cough syrup.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it's pretty nasty, but
Yeah.
I've been getting through it. So
Oh,
yeah, it's just
nice.
really
Good for
nice.
you.
It's nice to wind down. It's nice to catch up with you, mate. And thank you for having me. And
It's
yeah,
a
if you want to
pleasure,
get
mate.
Gordy on, give me a shout, and I'll bully him into joining the conversation.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it'd be really cool. The next
He'll be
one,
up for it, I'm sure.
yeah, the next one, hopefully Cobra will be back so we can have a bit more, used to can have a lively discussion and the audience will probably be happy with Cobra coming back. He does
Yeah,
bring
yeah, that'd be cool.
does
Yeah,
bring plenty of life to it.
yeah, for sure.
Uh, but yeah, and maybe we'll see what the feedback is on this one. And yeah, maybe we can devise something and push that in a slightly different way as well. So yeah, it's just happy days. Happy
Happy
days.
days,
Thank
mate.
you.
Happy days.
Love to family, dude. How's Winston?
Yeah, he's good. I think last time I spoke to you, I was a bit worried about him, was I?
Was, yeah, 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 was, yeah,
Yeah, so I thought he might have eaten half a tennis ball and been blocked up.
yeah,
But it turns out there was a doggy sickness bug going around the area,
yeah.
and a bunch of dogs had it. Anyway, the day after I spoke to you, he was pretty much back to normal. And yeah, so glory be to God, he is back to his normal self.
Excellent.
Happy days. He is sitting here staring at me as we speak because I haven't taken him for a walk yet. So I'm going to go and do that after this.
Yeah.
And but yeah, overall he is looking great and he's happy. So yeah, happy days.
Cool beans. Okay, great. Thank you very much. At the end of the podcast, I will say, please, guys, like, subscribe to the channel, do all the thing. Go over see Camel. Camel's. I'm not going to blow smoke up his backside. I've done it for too long, for too many bloody years now. But he's a massive influence on my success and what I've tried to do. So I would really encourage you to go over there. Have an open mind. Don't marry him, for God's sake. Just follow the logic of his conversation and go out and do your thing. Do your thing. You won't go wrong. So please do that. Um, Guys, I would just turn around and say, like, please, we've gone through quite a few subjects up to now. If there's anything you specifically want the boys to talk about or raise, or any other subjects you would like for us to have conversation, or if you do would love to appear on the podcast, please get in touch. CPM 100 423 at gmail.com. Thank you very much. Take care. See you later, dude. Bye bye.
Cheers.